What up, though? Welcome to Gangsta's Paradise. It's where I kick cautionary street tales. Click that like button, click that subscribe button, and click that little bell. That way you can get notifications for whenever I drop a documentary. Support Gangsta's Paradise by going to Teespring and purchasing GP merchandise. I appreciate the support. Thank you all for checking out Gangsta's Paradise. Gotta appreciate my subscribers. I really appreciate y'all for real, as I take it back to the D. When it comes to the D, we got a chance to witness some powerful stories during that era, which I call the Kingpin era or the 80s. You had guys who were big headlines, and you had guys who weren't exactly caught up in the popularity contest, but were making a significant amount of noise in the streets. I don't cover a lot of stories of guys from that era who had the popular headlines. I mostly focus on stories from the mud, such as the fam Face English would say. Guys that may not have had the major headlines. One of the things I notice about the era is there are people out there interested in connecting the dots. There have been debates in the chat about who knows who and how that situation came about. And it's interesting because many politics from the era have never been resolved. We watch different blogs and documentaries and stand back and say, well, it didn't happen exactly like that. The era is still politically charged. One of the reasons why I don't focus too much on that. OGs want to correct these stories, but nobody is able to tell their own story like themselves. Keeping up with YouTube guidelines, in no way, shape, or form am I here to encourage people to join gangs, cliques, crews, or mobs. But this is a fair warning if you choose to cross that line. Be sure to get over to the Gangsta's Paradise store on Teespring and purchase GP merch. Also, if you want to send a donation, you can send it to GP Doc. I appreciate the support. In my opinion, the height of the crack game is from 1984 to 1994, but others may think otherwise. In other documentaries, I explain how the game went from the 80s where there were a few shot callers to the 90s and so forth where there are hundreds of shot callers. Early in the game, young hustlers were getting ghetto rich, and the conversation became really thick, and one of the few names that rose to the top of that conversation was the Brown Brothers, otherwise known as the Best Friends. This is Family Cartel 7. Family Cartels is a mini-series within the Gangsta's Paradise umbrella where I cover stories of families making a fortune in the underworld. Check out my last one featuring the Hardy Brothers and the Den Sisters. I'm building something over here independently and would love for the GP Nation to take that ride with me, so I appreciate the support. The Brown Brothers, aka the Best Friends, Straight East Side. There are blogs, articles, documentaries, and so forth that discuss different aspects of the game. I know a few people close to the situation, folks who got caught up in that sweep and did fed time for affiliating themselves with the gang. So I'm not going to do too much name dropping, pretty much stick to what's reported and try to cover these stories as safely as possible. But I can't make it any worse than what's already been covered. Many of those Kingpin stories have been covered. Just want to put the GP spin on it, considering I'm grassroots, as we were young and scratching the surface and sitting back, watching how the gang grew in popularity. Since my mans got caught up in the indictment, many people used to ask why didn't I get caught up in the sweep? And the fact is, it didn't work like that. Because my position was, you deal with them and I deal with you. Though I would be there while many of these transactions were going down. 9 pieces, half birds, and then whole ones. The first day I arrived on the scene, dude pulled out a half a bird, taught me how to cook it up, and he said, let's go to work. As he was getting work from them. The Best Friends gang, the Best Friends, Boogaloo, Rockin' Reg, Ghost, and Iz. When the gang came to our attention is when they were working with Maserati Rick. Maserati had a car wash on Gratiot Avenue. We were from the area, so we would see these guys almost on a daily basis. Bruiser would be there as well. Our route, walking to school, put us in position to walk past the car wash back and forth to school. We can clearly see who was the shot caller, which was Rick. Salute to Maserati Rick Jr. He's out there pushing the Maserati Rick brand. Salute. Share this episode. Do me a favor and add this episode to your playlist. Leave a comment. I'm looking to get to 10,000 subscribers. That will give you all more exclusive access to GP merchandise. Salute to all my subscribers and the GP Nation. Salute. Share this episode. I really feel like these guys were extremely popular, and they embodied how we look at different cliques around America. Drugs, violence, sex. They took it to another level. Of course, the brothers are the architects of putting the gang together, but there were many people involved in the operation. Guys like Nate Boone Craft and another ranking member gave their insights on the gang.
Dude was paid 20 grand to kill. No questions asked.
A lot of times you wouldn't even know the reason. You was getting $20,000 to hit that person. So, what difference do it make? Why? Your why was at 20,000.
Before long, the gang was infamous in the D.
When people found out who you were, they would deal with you altogether differently because they would hear all the other rumors. Like, oh man, I ain't with them. I ain't gonna end up dead.
The youngest brother, Boogaloo, was the mastermind as Rockin' Reg enforced the gang's rules. Though the infrastructure may be as such, but many people who grew up with these guys believed the two younger brothers respected the older brothers, Rod and Ghost. The connotation is that the younger brothers are out of control, but people who grew up with these guys say Ghost and Iz could control them, or at least they would listen to their older brothers. Speaking of Ghost and Iz, most headlines or stories are from different mediums. There is not much info, particularly about those two. Kraft doesn't mention the older brothers at all. He pretty much just talk about Rockin' Reg and Boogaloo. But it could be that they were already dead before he joined the gang. Bruiser introduced him to the brothers, starting off as hitmen/enforcers, carrying out hits for Demetrius Holloway and Maserati Rick. As folks say, they used the gun to get into the gang. They were carrying out a lot of hits. When you mention the best friends, usually the word violence follows somewhere in the sentence. These guys were extremely violent, and it is reported that the gang committed at least 80 homicides. This is one of the most bloodiest black drug organizations in American history. These guys use extremes to operate their business. People have to realize when we think of the streets or the drug trade, the industry is full of sociopaths and mad scientists. And in my opinion, these guys were sociopathic or psychopathic, ice cold, no remorse. They settled the dispute with the gun. We will see Ghost, Bruiser, rolling up Grasher in those Volvos as they were working with the kids from the other side of Grasher, and Rockin' Reg would come up to our school in that Mustang. One of my guys, one of my classmates, used to work up at that car wash. Other guys known to be at that car wash went to my school. Knew a few women who were dating the guys. They were leaving a trail of scars around while gaining enemies. In reality, if someone was to hit one of these guys, it would be hard to pinpoint who carried out the hit. Subscribe to this channel. Share this episode. To all my subscribers, I got more grassroots stories coming soon. You all can cash at me at GP Doc for all your donations. Detroit, the 313, the Motor City, home of the auto industry, as many Southerners moved north to work in auto factories. During the baby booming era, Detroit was the top destination in America as they put America on wheels with the latest cars. Other areas wanted to get in on the business, particularly what we call across 8 Mile. They wanted the factories moved out there on their side of the world. When studying what happened to Nankin, aka Buckland Township, which is now known as Westland, Livonia, Garden City, Inkster, Wayne, Dearborn Heights, and Redford Township. A good history in music, as the great Motown sound was born in the D. As the auto industry outsourced, so did many jobs, which hit Detroit with disparity. And then crack cocaine came to town. This is Family Cartel 7. Subscribe to this channel. Share this doc. Today, people have access to these jobs as more jobs have come back into the city. If you all want to check more content on Demetrius Holloway, check out Eddie Jackson Jr.'s channel, as many of those guys are from the Eddie Jackson, Davis family, Murder Road umbrella. I started this journey along with my mans at 15 and 16 years old, working for Demetrius Holloway, though he had handlers handling the spot. Selling them back again in 357. He had 2 spots on the block. Both spots were doing approximately 8K to 10K a day. The spots were booming. The clientele was mostly white. Our password was Dick and Balls. With that being said, these were some of the worst addicts I have ever encountered. I knew a few people who were pretty close to Demetrius, and I was close with those. I like to think we're still cool to this day, though I'm not going to mention any names. In fact, they interviewed my mans at the scene of Demetrius Holloway's murder. The Top Hat Burger Stand, where they pulled that fake death, is the hood I grew up in. Considering we're close by, we're here to talk. But as workers, we were able to hear a lot of the talk. We will leave there and go into HBO territory, and now we're in the middle of White Boy Rick's situation, as we got a few guys working with Rick, including Steve. R.I.P. to the homie. Though we can sit around and listen to the talk, like Demetrius will be on the phone talking to our handlers, and we will hear the entire conversation. But we're young kids, and there's no way that we're involved in their politics. We didn't know people would be talking about this stuff 30 years later. In fact, we mobbed downtown to the White Boy Rick trial. I was actually down there at that trial. The D is dominated by the East and the West Side. East Side grimy, West Side shiny. Both sides get money, but not just in the streets, legitimately. You had crews on the West Side like YBI and Pony Down, holding it down. But when the crack era kicked off, the popularity switched to the East Side. The Curry Boys, Chambers Brothers, Big Ed, Eddie Jackson Jr., 2020 Boys, White Boy Rick, Bruiser, the Chaldeans, Pee Wee, Maserati Rick, Demetrius Holloway is considered the biggest. You had guys on the West Side doing their thing as well. Bolo, the Cash Flow Posse, the 50 Boys, guys like the Powell Brothers and Southwest T and Big Meech raking in millions off the drug trade. The best friends, Maserati and Demetrius, are starting to build up all these enemies. It really seems as if Maserati and Demetrius were trying to corner the market, but guys like the best friends and Big Ed wanted to do their own thing, as Boogaloo was setting up his connection through Maserati. Allegedly, Demetrius did not like this move, as he didn't trust the friends. The beef increased when a relative of the Brown brothers was shot, and the group blamed Demetrius. Remember, many people on the Brown brothers hit list came from the orders of Demetrius and Maserati. At least that's what Mr. Jackson Jr. say. Things started to really heat up when Iz was assassinated while sitting in the vehicle along with his brother when a gunman pulled up and opened fire, killing Izrod, narrowly missing Boogaloo as he was nicked in the head. The same day as the funeral of the brother Iz, their other brother Ghost was killed. Somebody was out to get the brothers, but it's hard to tell because by now they have accumulated so many enemies. They were laying the murder game down, and that's always been their reputation. Again, I am not here to promote violence. These guys were extremely violent. Now while all this is going on, Maserati still had his beef, as he was assassinated. Boogaloo secured the connection and were ready to do their own thing. Up to this point, the crew was primarily hitmen slash dope boys, and now they're kingpins slash hitman. They slowed down from the hitman thing and focused on that paper. And in my opinion, these guys were running the streets straight into the earlier part of the 90s. The brothers had serious attitudes towards the streets after their brothers were murdered. This is Family Cartel 7, the Brown Brothers, as they commissioned a hit for about 20 racks, as one of the gang members would describe in the documentary, or pay in dope. At least that's what they say. My mans is dealing with them as other members of the gang would get popular as well. They had a big female following. Women were in love with these guys. But I was working with my mans, and he got to the point where he was getting birds from one of the members, and we would sit up and break these birds down, pushing work, waking up early in the morning, cooking up a batch, loading the car up and hitting the streets. The ice cream man. I would sell anything from an 8-ball to a whole birds, whatever you needed. The heat came down on the gang when Nate Kraft started giving up information on the gang as he blamed Boogaloo for the murder of his little brother. The Alphabet Boys got involved, plus they were already in question locally for other murders. These guys were blazing hot, but they kept balling. My mans was dealing with them, and I would ride with him to make the connection. These guys would be all over the east side. This is why they were most wanted. Detroit got an addiction where folks can't stay away. The Kingpin era was all about money and power, and they wanted all the power. Their quest to control the drug trade, at least on the east side, was in their lap. All competitors from the 80s were dead or in jail. These guys were moving all up and down I-75. I am not encouraging folks to jump on I-75. Bruiser was killed in Atlanta, as many people believe the gang carried out the hit, allegedly. I'm not pointing any fingers. The feds turned up the heat and sprung a trap for the brothers in New York City as they were going to a car lot to purchase a BMW. They caught Rockin' Reg as Boogaloo was able to flee on a motorcycle and soon headed to Atlanta. He was found a few months later dead in an SUV. As they say, Boogaloo started to turn on the gang, having folks killed within the crew, knocking off people within the crew. So they knocked him off first, but that's neither here nor there. I don't want to get into all that, but Rockin' Reg is the only brother still alive as he is doing life in prison. Rockin' Reg was a real lunatic, or at least that's what it appears. Nate Boone does interviews as other members are released from prison and does not represent the gang. Many of these ex-kingpins will tell the youth, or at least they should tell the youth, not to follow in their footsteps. Subscribe to this channel. Thank y'all for checking out Gangsta's Paradise. I will be back with more grassroots stories from the D. It's coming soon. I appreciate y'all, GP Nation. One love, one love.